I'm Jennifer Johnson and I raise sheep for their wool. Okay.
Here at Whispering Pines Farm, we raise a small flock of Shetland sheep in western New York State with the goal of producing soft, crimpy wool for hand spinners. Thank you for liking this video and subscribing to our channel.
Most of the yarn that I hand spin is destined for my Fiber Festival booth. I have patrons that really appreciate getting yarn that's been handmade from a farm, from a ewe that they recognize or can get to know through looking at the information on the yarn label. So what this means is I'm only spinning the wool from my sheep. It's not a bad thing. I mean, I really love getting to know the sheep as I spend the time washing it, carding it, you know, just going through and touching every single lock. For me, that's really rewarding, and it just helps me get to know our flock a lot better and the type of wool that we're producing. So last fall, I was given the opportunity to work on fiber from a ewe that's not from our farm, and I was kind of interested to take it on for a couple reasons. Number one, as the title of the video says, it was sort of a sentimental project. So the breeder that asked me to make this item is not a knitter, and so he wasn't able to take this fiber and convert it into something for himself. Actually, it's a gift for his wife. And the reason that he wanted it made into something was because it was from one of their sheep in their flock that had passed on, and the sheep happened to have a really good temperament, and his wife really loved this little sheep. I think she was a lamb, but I'm not 100% sure. So I mean, it's unusual for me to spin yarn or spin fiber that's not from my sheep, but I just felt really like a kinship because, you know, the notion of losing a sheep and then being able to produce something that will kind of help that sheep live on and, you know, let them fill out at least a little bit of their potential. So I took it on and I was really happy to do so. And it started with a package that came in the mail, and in it was a bag of just the raw fiber that they had harvested from the ewe. They did harvest it after she passed, and I guess they clipped it so it didn't rue it off. I did find out the ewe that the fiber came from, her name was Ruby, and she was a Morit. The fiber, I think she was a lamb only because the staple length wasn't all that long, which was one of the challenges actually. So the staple was shorter, and it also didn't look as if she had ever hit the rise within that staple. So, you know, assuming they harvested the fiber in the fall and it was a spring lamb, that made a lot of sense to me when I looked at the fleece in the package. The other thing was that there was a lot of vegetative material in this fiber, and we coat our fleeces, so I don't really run into that when I'm doing my fiber, unless I'm working on neck wool, and I fully expect it to be have some VM in it. But this being, I think, a lamb, a smaller sized sheep in a large flock, and she didn't have a coat on, there was not a lot of VM. In fact, there were quite a few pieces that I couldn't even start to flick. It was just so full of it. There was more VM than there was wool. So at that point, you know, you're really better off just getting rid of it. So the fact that there was a lot of VM and it was a short staple was tricky for me, because normally my go-to process is to flick the lock and then spin from the lock and deal with the waste. With this, the length of the fiber was so short that it was difficult to hold on to it to flick it. So I had to develop a different method to prep the wool to be able to spin it. And then another challenge was I didn't really know how much I was going to end up with as far as spinnable fiber. So I didn't know what I was spinning for. You know, I was thinking, you know, what if I'm doing, you know, a nice worsted weight, because it was a little bit of, I would say it had some durability to it. It wasn't super fine and crimpy, so it could have been made into like a really nice sock yarn and still be soft enough to wear. But I didn't know exactly how much I was going to end up with. So that was a little bit of a challenge. What I decided to do was just to spin a fairly fine single and then ply that, and then find a scarf pattern that if it, you know, turned out I didn't have a ton of meters at the end, I could always convert it into like a cowl or something. So that was the strategy there. So once I figured that out, it solved a lot of my obstacles that were kind of roadblocking me from getting started. But you know, even with all those challenges, I really did enjoy working on this project just because I felt the end goal was so worthy. And I did think about that little little Ruby the whole time I was working on it. And so I felt really happy that I was able to do this for that couple. So my process to get the wool prepped for spinning was I was opening it up with my hands, kind of teasing the fibers and, you know, picking out any neps noils, any, you know, second cut bits, large pieces of straw or feed, but getting it ready then to put onto the drum carder. I have 128 TPM Majacraft Fusion engine drum carder, so really well suited for a fine short staple fiber because the cloth density is very tight, so it picks up really quickly and easily, and it doesn't pull it or stretch it or anything because there's so many tines packed in there. Then what I did was I took 2 dowels and I pulled off rolags, and that is kind of my new go-to process for short staple. It's really, when you're pulling the rolags off the carder, you're adding an additional amount of processing there by, you know, you're almost like pre-drafting as you're pulling it off of the carder, opening up the fibers even more. And I really love that. And I think that rolags look really shiny and clean and smooth. So I was having fun making those. And when I make the rolags, I only go like 3 inches along the drum, and then I'll pull that off, and that would be my finished rolag. I used to do really long ones, but then it would get to the point where it was so tight that I couldn't pull out the dowels. So now I'm doing like a 3-inch distance on the drum. And like I said, what I really like about it is you're almost doing a pre-drafting as you're pulling those dowels away from the drum. And I just really love the way they look. I think it's very satisfying to pull out the dowels. I like how shiny they are and smooth. And with shorter staple, you don't really notice it as you're pulling it off of the end of the rolag because there's just so much fiber there that it kind of all adheres together. So it makes it really nice, especially, like I said, for shorter staple. And then I spun long draw, not necessarily always ending up being a woolen yarn. It turned out more to be like more of a hybrid. So as far as I was concerned, for making something like a scarf, it doesn't have to be perfect. And adding a little texture, a little variation actually made the scarf look that much more interesting. So then towards the end, I got sort of tired of that process and I started to flick. That's kind of my go-to for my normal length stuff, just to get out a lot of the VM. I was a little bit more liberal as far as worrying about waste because I had gotten a good amount of fiber. So I was doing more flicking. I was actually also putting lashing fiber onto the combs and then combing some of it and then flicking some of it, just kind of mixing it up just to get something out of that wool that I'd be able to use for spinning. There was a lot more waste than I usually get. I would say I probably yielded maybe 25 to 30% from the original amount of wool that I got. So not a great yield. I started spinning before I finished making all the rolags just because I like to mix things up. I get really bored doing the same thing for a long time. So when I had enough rolags put together, I started spinning. I was using my vintage Rose, not one of the newer demo wheels, and I had it set up with the standard black plastic bobbin and the standard E-flyer, which is what I always use for spinning singles with finer yarns, especially farm-raised fleeces, because I don't wash all the grease out and it tends to really abrade standard metal guides. So all the ceramic linings really help me to keep my flyer last a lot longer. I used the Suzy Whirl with a 14:1 ratio, so not super fast, not super slow, kind of just right in the middle. And I did tilt the head because I wanted to have enough distance between me and the orifice in order to get enough twist. With those shorter staples, you really need a little extra twist in order to keep the yarn held together, at least until you get it plied. I use a Hansen E spinner to ply. This is a 2-ply yarn, and I use this little thing here, this little clip. It has a name, but I can't remember what it is, to handle the majority of the force. As the 2 singles are passing by, I just find it irritating on my fingers. And the yarn is going to be textured. It's nice and bumpy, which is fine. Because one of the things I've learned is, you know, once you knit your yarn up, your hand spun up, it's just lovely. And a good amount still of little bits of stuff, which there might actually be a little barbed wire there. But yeah, picking out the little bits of hay and stuff, I just do it as I go through each step of the process, and by the end, it's mostly gone. So this big blob there. One of my customers told me that it's best to ply a long distance from your wheel in order to let the twist sort of settle in and even out. So I'm doing that with this skein. Let's see if I notice any difference. So the pattern I picked, I'll show you this. It's called Morning Surf. I have made this pattern before with my hand spun. I had a Myoget ram, which is kind of like a honey gold color. And this was back when we first started. I don't think it was even super fine. His name was Clover. And I just spun it really fine. It wasn't anywhere nearly as textured as this. This, you know, I used a lot of stuff I wouldn't normally use. You can see right in here the the sun bleach tips kind of made their way through, which, like I said, I really feel like as long as it's consistently distributed throughout the whole project, little bits and pieces like that really don't bother me. This is a really fun pattern to spin. I'll put a link to the pattern on Ravelry in my description of the video. And it's very flexible. So I actually broke it. I took, I think I took 20 stitches off. I took 30. It's a 70 stitch wide. And I took 30 off. So I still got a pretty decent width. So it's very flexible. It's at multiples of 10 plus 7 at the end. And the stitch is really fun because there's this section where you wrap the yarn around the needle, so you get this really pretty open fisheye appearance, which makes it go really fast. So you get a lot of distance without a whole lot of effort. So that was the pattern I selected. This is the project bag, so I'm obviously done here with it. All I got to do is wind in the ends. But the project bag I kept it in while I was working on it is from Sue Carlson, and I got this from my son for Christmas. It's a Christmas gift. Let me see what she's got on here. Prairie Bag Works is the name of her business. Really of all the project bags that I get, hers are my favorite. And I met her at Jefferson Sheep and Wool Festival in Wisconsin. And she actually got a bunch of my yarn and made a few things with it. But I just feel like she's got really pretty pattern fabric, a lot of really thoughtful details, and very well made. Sometimes I look at project bags and I just feel like, you know, they aren't as careful. Even just like this little section over here, she's got a lot of reinforcements and stuff. And with her bags, she always sends little stitch markers, and I don't know where it is in here. I think I might have taken it out. There's a little card that she includes with a ruler on it. And here's a little charm that is on the zipper. Just little fun, thoughtful things to make it a special, more than just a regular bag, a special project bag. And I love the granny square pattern on it. I think that's really fun. I was really happy with the amount of length I got on this. I mean, it's a proper scarf, right? So it's 6 feet long. It's after I finished blocking it. And I feel like, you know, when I was spinning it, I wasn't really sure. Hopefully I'm not banging into the mic. I am. When I was spinning it, I wasn't really sure if it was going to be soft enough to wear against the skin, but There's a little bit of prickle, but it's not too bad. So I would wear this underneath my coat, my wool coat. So I'm really happy with it, and I was holding on to it until I made this video. So as soon as I finish recording this, I'm going to mail this out, and hopefully they're going to be really happy with it. The blocking, so blocking to me is the most anticlimactic, terrible part of a project. I hate it. Oh no, I got my hair all in the scarf. So this pattern you really have to block, which that's kind of, for me, I just can't stand blocking. I find it really tedious and fiddly. But I did block it. I blocked it out on my back deck. I just feel like it's kind of anticlimactic, and to me feels a little too much like sewing with all the needles and everything. But you really do have to do it so that you can see the detail in the pattern. And blocking, all I did, I have wires, but I ended up not using them. I just sort of laid it down. I didn't even actually use the pins all that much. I just kind of pinned the corners, I believe. But the balance of it, I just sort of spread it out, and it dried really nicely in the sun. It came out nice. So now the scarf is ready to be mailed out, which I'm excited about that. The project started back in November, and I really kind of went back and forth as far as whether I wanted to take it on, because there's always so much to do around here. But once we get the breeding group set up, things are pretty chill. So that period of time, January, February, was actually perfect to have this project to work on. So, and I did complete it, like I said, a little bit earlier, end of May. I finally had it done and sent the photo to let them know that it was done and whatnot. So I hope they're really happy with it. And I'm really happy that I was able to take the skills that I've acquired through the years to help them convert Ruby's little fleece into something that they can keep and remember her by for many years to come. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you can come back soon.